Welcome on into OneSoccer.ca. Andy Petrillo alongside Laura Armstrong, Kaylin Kyle, and our special guest joining us for the first part of the show, Olympic gold champion. That would be Julia Grosso, getting ready for the Arnold Cup. Also playing for Juventus, signing a new contract with them. Julia, it has been a busy, busy time for you since those Tokyo Olympics. But I want to go back just for 1 second to that moment in the gold medal game where you have to step up and take that penalty. Do you remember at all what you were thinking, how you were feeling, or were you just completely blacked out?
I feel like when I first like knew I was like the sixth kick and I knew how it was like all kind of playing out, and then I remember just walking there and I like honestly didn't think of anything. I was just like, okay, like just stick to like what you try at practice. But I remember like I didn't feel like at first, like when I knew I was kicking, it was a little nervous, but as soon as I started walking towards the ball, like it kind of just went away because I was just so focused that I like forgot like what was kind of going on, and then after it all hit me after that. But before that, yeah, I was a little nervous standing in the line for sure.
Okay, one little follow-up. Did you know where you were going to go with the ball? Did you know the kick? Did you know how you wanted to approach it?
Yeah, I knew like as I was walking up, like I kind of was just like thinking about it, and then I knew right away. And then also like the goalie, I just kind of like wait a second. She didn't like move, but I kind of felt like I just had a feeling she would go the other way. She dove the right way, but I just felt that, and she ended up going my way. But yeah, I knew beforehand.
I'm seriously impressed that you could do math in that moment. I would not be doing math. I would be all over the map. I'd be like, I'm not sure. I'm just going to hope it goes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just remember I couldn't breathe for like the minute of you walking up. I had my 3-year-old around my neck, like choke holding me, wanting to wrestle. I was like, not now, Hayden. I was like, this is the biggest moment in Canadian history for women's soccer. And then when you put it in, I remember bawling. Like as if I was like, what's wrong with me? Like hormone, and I couldn't even blame it on hormones. I'd had my second child for like a year since then. It was just such a cool moment, and obviously I'm like a massive fan of you. So yeah, it was really cool to see someone like you. Obviously everyone loves Sinclair, but I love that you're making your own name for yourself.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Quite honestly, my dad was also crying, so we can't blame on hormones. Like it was my dad, like both crying. So yeah, it was. What's it like to be like? Sorry, I'm just hopping in here. But what's it like to be part of such a big moment? Like, do you feel like you're going to be talking about that moment? That like, what was it, a minute and a half for the rest of your life?
Yeah. No, it's definitely like it's such an honor just to be a part of it and play alongside just such amazing people and just players. But yeah, I think like it's gonna definitely be a part of me for the rest of my life, just like that one moment. But even before that, like just like how connected our team was, like before the Olympics, like leading in, like the pre-camp, the camp, like just everything. Like we worked so hard and we're so united and connected as a team. It was like a family, that whole Olympics. So yeah, I'll like remember all those like details as well, that led up to obviously that moment. So yeah, I'll remember everything for sure.
Very special moment. Obviously, we hope you have many more moments. And right after that, a few months later, but we hear you sign with Juventus. What was the decision behind that?
I just loved like the way they played, the coaching style for sure. Yeah, but it's just like they're very possession oriented team, and I absolutely love that. So yeah, I think that, and also it's Italy. I don't know. I think living style. I just love Italy a lot. So it's been really good so far for sure. But yeah, it was just like honestly everything, especially the soccer wise. I like the way they play. So it was nice.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Bev, just to follow up on that quickly, one of the things that Bev mentioned in her press conference last week as she was setting up the Arnold Clark Cup, which we'll get to in a second, but she mentioned, you know, in the past, maybe it's been difficult for players to come from the NCAA environment into like a camp with the team. Have you found, since you've been with Juventus, that when you're coming into this camp, you have more preparation than maybe you would have before?
Yeah, I think in a way, just like the speed of play wise is definitely in a professional environment a lot faster, and just like, you know, quicker ball speed and all that. So I think, yeah, like definitely I feel more prepared coming in, but also like in college I felt like, you know, like my team, I loved it. It was awesome too. But yeah, I think now going to the professional environment with professional players and all of that definitely adds to my game, and definitely helps me in the national team environment for sure.
Okay, I'm going rogue. If everyone else is going rogue, I get to go rogue as well. I want to ask you, because obviously we had lived in Italy and Rome leading up to the 2011 World Cup. Don't want to talk about that World Cup. Just want to forget about that. But what is your favorite part of living in Italy? And are you taking classes to learn the language?
So yes, I'm starting next week to learn. I'm half Italian, so my grandma would try and speak to me when I was younger, but I didn't pick up much Italian. But yes, like living in Italy, my favorite part would probably just be the food. The food. I don't think I could honestly eat pasta anywhere else now. After eating it in Italy, like I actually don't think I can. Like the sauce is unbelievable there. So like there, yeah. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
definitely.
I feel you. It's so difficult to just, I mean, my family, I still have a ton of family in Italy, and they just like stick their hand out the window and grab tomatoes off a vine on the side of the house, and they make it. I'm like, okay, that is absolutely perfect. And we'll dive more into your experience in Italy, but you are in camp because you're getting ready for the inaugural Arnold Clark Cup. For some reason, I cannot say that.
It's kind of a tongue twister.
It really is. Thank you. I'm pretty sure that's the third time I goofed that up. But it's an inaugural tournament and it's an invitational, so it's pretty special that Canada is going to be there. What are you hoping to gain out of it? Like even from a player perspective, as you also head into a World Cup year, is there some experimenting you'd like to do? Or as a player, do you want to kind of be as set and this is kind of the tactics you would be working on no matter what? Just what are your expectations at this tournament?
I would definitely just say like continue to improve like as a team, like in one like tactically, and just continue to work on our tactics. I think for myself, like there's definitely some things that I need to improve on. I think this is a tournament that I can definitely do those things and try and improve throughout each game and training session. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for our team to work on some things and obviously try it out now because it's a good tournament to do it in. So yeah.
I just want to ask you a quick one. Sorry, Laura, I cut you off. I know I did. I'm like dying to ask this though, because obviously I've been a fan of yours since I first called one of your games, and then the Olympics I fell in love with you. But I feel like you're very coy and shy in the way that you are the next person of that. You are that person in the midfield. I mean, alongside players like Jessie Fleming. And I don't think maybe it's hit you yet, but from someone that used to play now watching the team, like this is going to be your team someday. So I know you talked about tactics going into camp, but for someone like yourself, has it ever crossed your mind that you're that new leader on the team, on the Canadian women's national team at such a young age?
Well, thank you. I appreciate you for saying that. I don't know. I just come into camp, work hard. I don't know. I just don't really think of it like that. But yeah, I know my role now. I know what I have to do, what I have to work on and stuff. So I just make sure I continue to stick with that. But I thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
This is the niceness I got to get some of that out of you. We'll FaceTime later.
Since you didn't know, Kaylin is president of the Julia Grosso fan club.
That and Adriana Leon.
Yeah, it's like last episode, it was like we had to like, come on, we're moving on here. We're talking about somebody else right now. If it's easier, maybe to talk about other people than yourselves, like you're in camp now with this team. Is there anybody that you've seen over the last couple of days you're thinking like this person is poised to like break out? Anybody that you think Canadian fans could maybe look at and think, you know, this is somebody to watch over the course of this next 3 games against England, Germany, and Spain?
Yeah, I think everyone obviously is like so good in their own ways and everything. I would say though, even though I think there's like, I don't know, I can't like, there's just like a lot of player. I would say like Jessie, but like she's already broken out. Yeah, but I think she constantly, or like a Deanne Rose too. But she like they already have though, like, you know, but they always definitely continue to impress me. But there's like, I think every single player has that chance to do that, and they're all amazing. So yeah.
Who did you watch? Which, by the way, Kaylin, thank you so much for naming always the Italian girls. Just say, I'm going to point that out.
I love my Italians.
Yes. Okay. It's a grazie. But let me ask you, Julia, is there anyone you looked up to? And it doesn't necessarily have to be anybody on the Canadian team, although I wonder if there is a mentor on the team in particular who really kind of took you under their wing and helped you along, because the Olympics, you know, they really, for the general public, was really your coming out party and where you became a household name. So sure, if there was someone on the team that really guided you along, but in general, when you were growing up, was there anyone in particular you looked up to and just tried to model your game after?
I wrote Christine Sinclair. I think that's definitely a big one. And I know like also like coming into the team, Desiree Scott really like helped me out. And she like was so nice to me and always, you know, like if I needed help with something, would do like grow room with me, like film and stuff like that. So definitely those two like have helped me, like Christine Sinclair, like ever since I was like so young for sure, and Desi too. So yeah, those two.
Okay, what was it like when you met her? Because I've met so many athletes where when they grew up and then started to play professionally, and then it turns out their idol is now their coach, they just couldn't believe it, right? Like I just don't know how you reacted when you first met Christine.
Oh yeah, I was like definitely very like nervous. Like I remember the first time she like passed me the ball, like my first camp, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it was such a great moment. But yeah, like she's just so nice and welcoming to like everyone, and she's just such a great captain leader, like and just like on and off the field, just such a good person to speak to. So yeah.
Well, at least when I met her, I had pictures of her on my bedroom walls growing up. Her and Carmelina Moscato. Again, another Italian. I don't know. Maybe I'm into it.
Girl, just admit it. Just admit it.
I got to get rid of my English husband and find me an Italian man. But yeah, I remember those. I was a little bit embarrassed though, because I'm like, I literally went to bed being like, night, Sinky. Like, you know what I mean?
That is funny. Please post that on social once this show is done.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Night, Pinky. Well, before we let you go, and I actually have a question for both Julia and Kaylin. Because the two of you obviously having a chance to live abroad and having, spent some time in Italy. But the question is this. I'll begin with you, Kaylin.
Okay.
What was the thing you actually missed about Canada when you were living elsewhere? But by the way, you probably, because you're still not living in Canada, we miss you. What's the one thing you miss the most?
I miss that. I miss the people. That's the one thing. Like, I love traveling. I love living in Italy. I love living in Sweden. I'm very like free spirited. I can fit in anywhere. And everywhere I go it feels like home, but it's the people. Like, I was just in Toronto covering the men's game, and I was getting like deboarding the flight. And you know how everywhere else in the world, it's like a mad rush to the front. People are knocking you over to get off. And I'm like, okay. I like got out, there was no one behind me, and this man had dropped a Kleenex by my feet, and he was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, oh my God, I'm back in Canada. And it felt so good. Like, everyone's just so nice and like so respectful. So that's definitely the one thing I miss is the people.
What do you miss, Julia?
I definitely say the people as well. Like, when you're in Canada, because things like that happen all the time for sure. I also miss just like my family and some of like my closest friends. Like, it's because my family will come and visit me, but just being around them all the time, like cousins, aunts, uncles, my mom, dad, sister, like I just like miss kind of that atmosphere of just being around them and like just knowing they were like there all the time, even though they still are with a FaceTime call away, but it's a little different when you're around them all the time. So definitely family.
It's different. I thought maybe like Timmy's or
that too.
Yeah.
Love Timmy's.
Got to give a shout out to Timmy's there. Well, Julia, we really appreciate you taking the time. We wish you the best of luck in this tournament. We're looking forward to seeing the team back on the pitch. We missed you. I know you had a couple games there against, Mexico, but we just want to, see what you have, because it's exciting heading into a World Cup qualifying year. So have a great camp, and we look forward to watching.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Julia.
There you go. That is Julia Grosso of the Canadian women's national team. They're in camp right now, getting set for that Arnold Clark Cup. I have to say it very slowly. Oh, who was that?
So that's Winston. He's like staring at me. My golden retriever's literally like, let me in now.
Oh, Winston. All right. Well, let us discuss a little bit this tournament here, because the Canadians take on England first. And Kaylin, so what do you want to see? Do you want to see Bev Priestman do some experimenting? Do you want to see, both goalies got to go in net here a little bit, because who's going to be the heir apparent? We know Steph LeBay is going to retire in the spring. Like, what are some of the things you want answered possibly in this tournament?
Well, Steph LeBay is retiring from soccer, but I think she could be back in the Winter Olympics for curling. If you haven't seen it, go check it out on social media. I think for me, definitely experimenting. I was a big, big advocate. I loved when Janine Becky played in that wing-back position. Obviously, I know we have the Ashley Lawrences, but I'd love to see Bev tinker with that a little bit. I think this is a great tournament to test players. I think The European players for me need to step up in this. Obviously, you look at the NWSL players that have been out for so many months. It's a long off season, and it's not that they're going back to a country where they can go and play 7-a-side outside. They're going back to Winnipeg, Toronto, cold, rainy Vancouver. So I think the European players need to step up, but I'd love to see Bev really maneuver with that back three. I think we have the players to do it. I think we have the pace to do it. I think we have the skill sets to do it as well. And I think too, the reason why we lack goals is because we can't get enough players forward. And I think this system allows us to get players forward. And I just genuinely don't think Bev's had a lot of time to obviously try it out in major tournaments. You see them kind of switch it a little bit. I think it was New Zealand where Becky was playing in that wing back position. So that's what I'm dying to see her try, especially going up against the Germanys that are 8th, the Spains that are 10th, Germany's 3rd, England 8th. I think this is a really good test for these players and for the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting, I think, to see with how Bev balances like the scrutiny that's going to be paid attention to this tournament. Like, I think a lot of people are going to look at this tournament and think, okay, this is maybe the first major competition that Canada has been in since they won a gold medal, and I expect them to go in and dominate. And Bev has already said, like, that's absolutely not what's going to happen. And I think that she needs to, and I think she will, but I think she needs to go into this tournament and tinker, like there's questions for me about, like, for example, we didn't see a lot of Shalina Zadorsky in the Olympics. What's going to happen there? What's going to happen in that center back position? If you're playing with 3 at the back, which I would love to see them try out, maybe Kadisha's in the middle and you've got a couple wing backs, but who's Kadisha's backup? Who's coming in if Kadisha goes down and gets hurt, or if you need to put her up at striker, which I would also be cool if they tinkered with. Like, I think it's going to be really up to Bev to sort of stick to that and say, I'm going to not let the results necessarily dictate how I approach this tournament, and I'm going to find out what's best for this team so that when the results actually matter, we know what works for us. So it's going to be really interesting. I also think that goalkeeper battle is interesting because I think that, everybody thinks Kaylin Sheridan is the heir apparent, but one of the things that has really worked for this Canadian squad over the last, 10, 15 years is the fact that it's important to have a really big and sort of a goalkeeper group that's really pushing each other. And you need to make sure that Sabrina D'Angelo and Devin Kerr and Erin McLeod are pushing Kaylin Sheridan to be the best, because I think that's why Steph was at her best last summer, because she had really good players behind her. So it's not just about whoever's in net, it's about the other goalkeepers around her making sure that she's really earning that number 1 spot.
You bring up an interesting point, and I wonder, Kaylin, if you can relate in some way after that gold medal in 2012, the bronze medal in 2012, because when you win a medal on the largest global stage, which is the Olympics, more eyeballs naturally will be on you. You do become a household name, and the expectations, whether you like it or not, just, slowly start to go up. So now this team has won gold. And I just wonder, did the team all of a sudden feel that pressure? Did they feel those eyeballs on them? Was that something that you also had to learn to work around? Whereas before, you would play. Obviously, you still want the attention, but then when you get it, the errors can also get highlighted too, right?
Yeah, and I think the difference, though, from 2012 to now is these players are playing in the top leagues. They're playing in Champions League. They're playing in NWSL championships where there's not 6 teams. There's, going to 12 teams this year. There's where we're going to get to it in a minute, but putting money where their mouth is, quite frankly. So I think the pressure these players are finally getting that outside of the national team is where we had only gotten it when you're in with the national team, which is very different from the men's side, obviously. I do think there is a big weight on this team's shoulders because they've medaled at three Olympics now, bronze, and gold, but we tend to struggle at World Cups. And quite frankly, it's because the best teams aren't at the Olympic Games, for soccer anyway. So you look at the Olympic Games, and yes, it's one of the biggest tournaments on the world scale, but it's actually not the biggest tournament for a female soccer player to play in. That is the World Cup. Now, if you ask me to pick, what would you rather play in? I would say Olympic Games, which is crazy for a soccer player to say, but it's because I grew up watching the Olympic Games. I love the Olympic Games. But it's actually the World Cup is the most desirable trophy to lift as both maybe Champions League for men, but a World Cup with your national team on both the male and female side is one of the biggest moments of any person's career. And I would have loved to have lifted a World Cup. So I think that's the biggest task for this team is, can they do it on the biggest scale? Because the Olympic Games is not the biggest scale for soccer.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why Arnold Clark is important to Bev, right? Like she said, we need to be playing against European competition. I went back and looked, and I think Canada has only won one of the last 8 World Cup games against European competition. That was Switzerland in round of 16 in 2015, I believe it was. So it's like you want to make sure you have that competition because there's going to be 11 European teams at the World Cup, and that's good, at least. And so that's going to be. It's going to be important that you have some familiarity. I mean, Bev said we're probably going to run into one of these teams at the World Cup, and you get a huge advantage if you know them a little bit better, having played them once before.
And we know this success has really, spurred this conversation on about having a domestic league. And I mean, again, whether we like it or not, you can call it fair or unfair. You start to just watch the team to be like, okay, right? Because if you play at a certain caliber, then the conversation keeps going. But that shouldn't be the case. The conversation needs to keep going regardless, and there needs to be that real push to have a domestic league here in Canada. And Canada Soccer President Nick Bontis, I actually had a chance to speak with him on OneSoccer.ca, and he did say that there is a new posting right now for a position for someone who will lead the charge on that. They will report to Canada Soccer. They will report to the Canada Business Soccer Board as well. He wasn't shy either in saying he wants a woman to head that, just because, he feels that they relate. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it's also a former player? But that's where that next step seems to be. And so, Laura, once they get that person hired, where do you want to see them go after that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a conversation that I feel like we're spinning our wheels, right? I feel like we should be far past where do we want to go from hiring this position, right? We've been talking, and it's funny because I think there's been this like surge in this conversation since the women's team won the gold. But quite honestly, people in women's soccer circles have been talking about this for many years before that. It's not new. We write a story. I've written a story at least once a year for the last 5 years about when are we getting a women's league, when are we getting a professional franchise, and I think that we're the fact that we're still being like, what's the next step is a problem, right? I think that, one of the biggest steps is going to be investors, and building those relationships. And I also think that one of the big conversations is direction, right? Because I think that you're talking about potentially there's a field of thinking that people think, well, we're going to go through the NWSL first, and we're going to have an NWSL franchise first. Okay, well, if that's the case, then you're putting off a domestic women's league in Canada even longer, right? So are you going to take advantage of the momentum that's happening, not just in women's soccer right now, but in soccer in general in this country? So I really do think that, I'm glad to hear that there's a position happening. I'm scratching my head as to why, it's just like, it's not hired. It hasn't been hired. We're 6 months out of the Olympics, and I just feel concerned that the momentum is already waning. People are already less interested, the general public. Whereas if we had a women's league that was going to, start up the September after Canada won gold, well, that would have been phenomenal. So, I don't know. It's a very, I find it a very frustrating conversation. I think a lot of people in the Canadian soccer community do too. It's not new, and we need to start, making steps. And no matter what's next is, it needs to happen right away, right? There has to be a time frame. It has to be fast because we're already losing time.
Yeah.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be respectful in the way that we can talk about this all day long, but I am so sick and tired, and it's draining to hear now we're looking for a position to be filled to have a women's league or to head it. That should have been done 10 years ago. I've spoken to Nick, and he has said, we're working on it. We're working on it. It's time to put your money where your mouth is. You can talk all day long, and we can talk in circles. And quite frankly, that is what Nick is doing. That is what he's done in the media. That's what he's done doing interviews with you guys. And I'm not being disrespectful to Nick, because I actually really like the guy. I think he's fantastic. But you haven't done anything. We've now gone 3 Olympic Games. where we've gotten a bronze, another bronze, and now we've gotten a gold. Laura, you nailed it. There should have been something implemented for the start of this season, not the NWSL, because there's players within Canada that have been building this. But now, unfortunately, because people don't want to, I won't get into names, people don't want to work with them. They want to do this on their own. It has to be under one entity. Players have gone overseas to coach. Players have gone to the NWSL to coach. There's a player in Canada that fits the criteria through and through. They shouldn't be looking for a position. They have her in Canada behind the scenes and has been doing the groundwork. That is the most frustrating part. And this is where it's kind of, it's not telling lies, but it's telling a little bit of fib, where you go to your mom and dad and, did you have the last Coke in the fridge? Well, you know, there's just got to be a direct conversation. We have players in Canada that would be perfect for this. We need a domestic league. You have three, right? Yeah, 3 MLS clubs. You have a successful CPL. You have the Forge that did outstanding in CONCACAF. So that's build momentum. So you have 2 male professional leagues in Canada, but you don't even have a semi-pro women's league in Canada. That's literally mind-boggling when the #1 registered sport in Canada is soccer. That's over hockey. That's over football. That's over figure skating. It's soccer, and it's one of the cheapest sports to register your kids in as well. So you're not paying for all the equipment of hockey. You literally need shoes in your registration. Yes, it's travel. It's changed a little bit from when I played, when it was, I think, $150. But the excuses now, they're like getting tiresome, and it's like really annoying for someone like myself to read them and be like, that's a lie. You're just saying this to bide yourself time, because enough's enough. Like we shouldn't be in 2022 without a women's domestic league. Producer, you can cut this out and just maybe like don't tag Canada Soccer in it or Nick, but like, come on, someone's got to say it. It's like, everyone knows that I'm always really outspoken. I'm trying to do this in a respectful way, but when's enough? Like,
Yeah, and I mean, we know that League One Ontario exists. We know that another League One, I want to say, in BC is coming. But to your point, those are still very disjointed. Those are not very connected. Like to your point of the Canadian Premier League, like
there's no grassroots, there's no flow
national.
So you have these women that are playing around the world that would be amazing to be playing in your own backyard. How about someone like a Quinn that is changing the world in which we live in, but they're playing in the States when we could have them in our own backyard? Players like Christine Sinclair that we could bring back. Rianne Wilkinson, instead of coaching in the NWSL, could coach in Canada and be around friends and family. Carmelina Moscato, that has moved to the Bahamas and is now overseas, bring her back to be a head coach. You have Diana Matheson in Canada. You have, I mean, Melanie Booth, the list, Amy Walsh, the list goes on and on and on and on, women. So stop looking for someone to fill the role. You don't need to look. They're all there.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of those,
are we allowed to drink, Andy? Did you ask if we were allowed wine on these things yet?
I feel like that will be in the next episode. But I mean, you've mentioned a lot of the Canadians. Yes, they're overseas. We just had Julia Grosso on, right, who's now going to be plying her trade in Juventus, and the Canadians now who have been doing so in the NWSL. Let's just turn our attention quickly to that league, because for the first time ever, they do have a collective bargaining agreement. They have a CBA that they signed. Among the things there, is a higher salary now. There is allocation money that can allow for salaries to be in the 6-digit figure range. We're going to talk about Trinity Rodman in just a moment. There's free agency as well, where, after 6 years and then beginning in 2024, after 5 years now, you can be a free agent. What do you make of that, Kaylin, in having a CBA first and foremost? And do you think that kind of puts them in some sort of competitive way with those European leagues?
Absolutely, because you look at the teams of which they're adding, and you look at the ownership of which they're adding as well, women driven. I mean, you look at San Diego, you look at LA, these teams that are coming into the league with money, that are putting proper playing ground structures involved, but it came down to players having a voice. And I touched about it on our first episode, where I think this is where Jordan Heidema is going to play a big role in the development of Canada soccer with social media, because it took these big players in the NWSL, Winston's made his appearance in here, to literally push those doors open. And without players standing up, and without players having that voice of being like, look, we need this, we need to be protected. We were never protected. He's like running around. Sorry.
Trying not to laugh because this is a very serious topic, but I am loving Winston.
But you have these players that literally give everything, and then within a moment of a snap of a fingers, or like, you were traded from the East Coast to the West Coast, and by the way, you're only on $15,000 for your yearly salary. And oh, by the way, when you're not in season, you don't have health insurance. You don't have maternity leave. So best of luck. Like, it was like one of the hardest leagues I've ever played in, because I gotten traded numerous times, and I'm like, how am I supposed to get my dog here? Like, thankfully I didn't have a family then, because I couldn't even imagine. And like a lot of these players with their family credit cards, because they couldn't afford to buy groceries at the end of the day. So I think it's huge. I think it's going to push these teams further. And I think it's going to weed out some of maybe the teams. I don't think there's any teams. I think all the ones that should have been weeded out have been weeded out, thankfully. But I think all the teams within the NWSL you're starting to see that change. And I think now even more so, obviously, with just the change of a lot of coaches and all of that, you're starting to see the NWSL, what it should have been 10 years ago, finally being what it is today in 2022. And thank God for these players, because like a 15 grand a year with no health insurance, like what are we doing here?
I can't even imagine that. It's completely mind boggling, which is why then I think, round of applause, please, for the Trinity Rodman contract. She was the 2021 Rookie of the Year. She signs a 4-year deal worth $1.1 million. So yeah, okay. I was told there wouldn't be math in sports, but we're looking at about 275.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
There you go. $275,000 a year, which is pretty good. Now, of course, even though the max salary, so in the new CBA, even though the minimum salary is $35,000, max salary is in the 70s, I believe it is. Because of the allocation money, which is a 6-digit figure, they're able to make that work. Laura, I mean, when you saw that deal, did you just go, wait, did I read that right? Like, my goodness, we're seeing the fruits of the new CBA's labor immediately.
Yeah, and honestly, it was so nice to see it right away, right? Like, it was so nice to see, like, okay, there's this allocation money floating out and we don't have to wait a year for somebody to use it. But this is exactly what the NWSL wants, right? And the players want, is the fact that this league is now coming up against other leagues across the world to bring it back to this conversation about domestic leagues. And they're going to need to pay to keep players and pay to bring players. And this is what we're seeing through this Trinity Rodman deal. The thing that I'm thinking about is the fact that, part of the problem, this doesn't really necessarily help Canadian players if we're bringing it back to that. I mean, this is going to be a league that I think is going to be important to build in terms of like domestic players and making the U.S. women's national team better. So there's not going to be necessarily that many opportunities for Canadian players, just like every domestic league should. So that's a thing for me. I still think that, this is a great deal, but I have to look at it. And there's just a little twinge for me of, I wish this was the case in Canada, because, I feel like a lot of players are getting lost in the dust. And as Kaylin sort of said, or left in the dust, and I feel like, as Kaylin said, one of the things that we are dealing with right now is the fact that, there's Diana Matheson, there's Carmelina Mastato. You can name off a dozen people who are really trying to move the sport forward in the country, and that's fantastic. But why are there so few people who are trying to move the sport forward in the country and have that responsibility? We saw it with the NWSL, and now we're seeing it in Canada. And I just feel like if we had a domestic league, if we had more pathways, there would be more players to choose from, which would be great for our national team and also to support the sport. So yeah, I'm just going to bring that back to, this is great for Trinity Rodman, and I really hope that we can see this one day in the future. Great foundation, but I'm still mad about the last topic we were talking about, so I really can't get off.
Me and Laura woke up on the wrong side of the bed for this show today. Sorry, Andy. You haven't slept in about 2 weeks, and me and Laura are here to play.
Yeah.
I just feel like I feel like I'm at a tennis match right now. I'm just doing one of these as you guys are going. But the first question, and this is what I get from a lot of people who are cynical about a women's league, and whether it be a domestic league or just even the NWSL right now, and they see that kind of money, and right away it's like, well, is it sustainable? Can they sustain a salary like that, or because they're doing this, they're going to completely fold? What do you make of that, Kaylin? Because I feel like if they clearly have the money to do that. I mean, and let's also kind of make a point here that there are a lot of leagues who also function sometimes in the red. Men's leagues. This isn't anything new.
Yeah.
But what making the league?
What industry and what working place where you start out are you in the green for probably the first 3 to 5 years? Yeah. It's unheard of in any industry. So if you're not willing to take a leap, if you're not willing to take a chance, of course you're going to be cynical about it because you're not willing to even try. I mean, you look at the ratings. Let's just, for example, around the world, ratings in women's soccer is going through the roof. You look at the England League. England is probably worse than Canada. Obviously, I married an Englishman. They're very old school thinking where it's like men play football and women are in the kitchen cooking and cleaning. And you saw that when that women's league got announced, everyone on social media saying, shouldn't you be doing my laundry? No, you can go do the laundry and then cook me a meal after I score 4 goals in this match tonight. But that's the difference. They have some of the highest ratings over in England at the moment, more than some men's games, quite frankly. Obviously not the big ones, but like when the lower teams play one another, because people are invested in women. People are invested in women's sport, and people enjoy watching women's soccer because it's a good league. I mean, you're even looking at the NWSL. Now this one's a little bit weird to me in the NWSL because you look at the support that the women's national team gets for selling out stadiums. You don't see that in all the markets, but it's because some of the stadiums in those markets are so far outside of city limits that it's very difficult to get to. You look at Portland, amazing venue because it's right in city center. It's easy to get to. You can take the train. It's sold out. It's extremely hard to get tickets. It's the same thing. Seattle's obviously now moving back to where the MLS play. Thank God. I don't know why they went to Tacoma, but you put a stadium in the right spot for women's soccer and you're going to sell tickets. And I just think Canada, we have so much money in Canada. We have the infrastructure. We have, successful leagues, 2 successful leagues. And now we're like starting to win over Canadians. I think if we don't get a domestic league within the next year, we are severely missing the boat. And I genuinely don't think we'll ever get one if we don't get one in this next year, especially because our men's team's doing so well and our women's team.
Well, all 3 of us cover the men's game, and everything you've just said are the exact same topics we talk about on the men's side. There are certain teams that struggle in certain markets because of all the same reasons. And the reason why I just point that out is because this isn't something that's about the women's game.
No.
It's just about sports. So you almost have to just throw out the gender part of it, which can be very frustrating and annoying because both sides just face the same challenges and both sides can definitely revel in the same success. Spicy meatball today.
We are spicy.
It's spicy, but
Good
always
intention, though. Well-intentioned, right?
well-intentioned,
Yes,
as
we are.
always. And it was great having Julia Grosso join us off the top of the show.
So nice.
Can't wait to see what the Canadians do in that Arnold Clark Cup. I feel like I have to say it like a robot now so I don't mess up the name. Laura Armstrong, Kaylin Kyle, I'm Annie Petrillo. Thanks for tuning into OneSoccer.ca.